He's going to provide defensive weapons in the form of the Patriot missiles, and he's going to provide another set of missiles that have a range of about 300 miles or two to 300 miles. So it'll be limiting, and I think they're going to probably remove some of the limits on striking inside of Russia.
Now then, the US President Donald Trump is reported to have asked President Zelensky of Ukraine whether he was able to take aim at Moscow. But now he's told reporters that he does not want Ukraine to target the Russian capital. This is what he's been saying.
Well, at the end of 50 days, if we don't have a deal, it's going to be too bad.
Should Zelensky get more aggressive?
The tariffs are going to go on and other sanctions go on.
Should Zelensky target Moscow? Should Zelensky target Moscow, sir? Should Zelensky target Moscow or deeper into Russia?
No, he shouldn't target Moscow.
Is that why you gave him more weapons, though?
Well, we also heard the president talking there about his warning to Vladimir Putin that he has 50 days to agree to a ceasefire with Ukraine, or he could face punishing sanctions, including secondary tariffs on any countries that continue to trade with Russia. Earlier this morning, the US president spoke to the BBC's Gary O'Donoghue and said he's not done yet with President Putin.
You've said you were 4 times close to a deal with Putin.
Yeah, I thought I had a deal 4 times.
Are you done with him? I mean, I know that sounds a simplistic thing.
But I'm disappointed in him. But I'm not done with him, but I'm disappointed in him. So we had a deal done 4 times, and then you go home and you see he just attacked a nursing home or something in Kiev. I said, what the hell was that all about?
Do you trust him?
I trust almost nobody, to be honest with you.
So how do you deal with someone you can't trust?
Well, it's not a question of that. It's like I'm disappointed that this hasn't been done.
Well, let's get the view then of Joseph Westphal, who's a former US Acting Secretary of the Army and a former US Ambassador to Saudi Arabia. Good evening to you, Ambassador.
Good evening. Good evening. Good to be with you.
Great to have you with us. Lots that we've heard from President Trump in the last 24 hours or so. First of all, how significant do you think is the shift in the US president's approach to President Putin? He said there that he's not done with the Russian president, but he's very disappointed with him. And he is now threatening the Russians with some pretty severe sanctions if they don't sign up to a ceasefire.
I think this is very, very significant in light of how Trump has moved from the time in his first term when he was very complimentary of Trump and saw him as a very powerful and an important leader to today when he's even questioning whether he trusts him. He said he doesn't trust anybody, so I assume that includes Mr. Putin. And I think the fact that he's able to cut this deal with the Europeans to shift the movement of weapons through them so that they're buying them. The United States is not directly providing those weapons to Ukraine, but through Europe. I think that's a remarkable step and a really smart step. It gives the Europeans greater autonomy in deciding how they're going to support Ukraine and what they're going to allow Ukraine to do. So I assume that once these weapons are in the hands of the Europeans and transferred to the Ukrainians, many of the limitations that we place on them, that President Biden placed on them and President Trump has been placing on them, may not be sustainable after that. It'll be up to the Europeans and the Ukrainians. So I think it's a very important step.
We've also had reports of this conversation between President Trump and President Zelensky. Vladimir, can you hit Moscow? Can you hit St. Petersburg too? Trump is reported to have asked the Ukrainian president. And Zelensky says, well, absolutely, we can if you give us the weapons. And President Trump is now saying that he's not encouraging further killing and that he wants to end the war. What do you make of this?
Well, again, I think that's a really good good way to approach this. He's not going to provide Ukraine at this time with Tomahawk missiles that can actually reach Moscow from Ukraine. He's going to provide defensive weapons in the form of the Patriot missiles, and he's going to provide another set of missiles that have a range of about 300 miles or two to 300 miles. So it'll be limiting, and I think they're going to probably remove some of the limits on striking inside of Russia. But as he said pretty clearly, he's not going to support hitting Moscow, and I think that's a smart move on his part.
Yeah, because that clearly would escalate the war, although it has to be said that Ukraine has already struck, certainly on the outskirts of Moscow, hasn't it? Admittedly
Yes.
with drones rather than with more destructive missiles.
Yes. Yes, and the drone technology continues to improve dramatically. And so, you could potentially attack Moscow, St. Petersburg, and other major Russian cities with drones with significant destruction. So we'll see what happens with that.
We know that the US is now going to provide these Patriot air defense missile systems and other weapons, which the US president described as top-of-the-line weapons. We don't know what this is. I mean, how significant, how much difference do you think the further supply of these US weapons, including the Patriots, how much difference could that make at a time when Ukraine appears to be under a really renewed offensive by the Russians?
Yes, I think this is very significant. Both the combination of the Patriots, the F-16s, airplanes that they have, and the ATACMS that are these other rockets that we're providing them, or that the president was willing to provide them, will make a significant difference. I think it'll create. Not an iron dome like Israel has, but it'll provide significant protection. We've provided Patriot batteries to many countries in the Middle East, for example, and they were able to ward off a significant amount of rocket attacks from the Houthis and from Iranian groups, supporting groups. So I think that's going to be important for Ukraine.
What about these threat of sanctions, the tariffs, the secondary tariffs, saying that countries that continue to trade with Russian, particularly in Russian oil and gas, could face sanctions or could face US tariffs of up to 100%. But none of that's going to happen for 50 days, which, as we were talking to a Ukrainian MP, was saying, that in itself is going to cost Ukrainian lives in that intervening period. And of course, I mean, President Trump has changed his mind on various different tariffs against various different countries very many times. Do you think he's actually going to go ahead and slap those sanctions on Russia?
Yeah, I don't see why he wouldn't, but I'm not a big fan of these sanctions. I don't think in the end they really work like they should. There's so many ways for these countries. Iran has done it, Russia has done it. Many other countries have skirted the sanctions and have been able to find ways to sell their oil and other products. North Korea has done it. So I don't think that that's necessarily going to be a real big problem. And the countries are going to find a way to either buy Russian oil or deliver Russian oil where it's needed without us really being able to discover it in time.
And I mean,
that's my opinion. I'm not an expert on this, but I think that that's the case.
There are questions too, aren't there, about how the US is going to gauge the extent of trade that any country is doing with Russia. And also, I mean, obviously, one of the biggest countries that's continuing to trade with Russia is China. And the US president has just massively rode back on the last lot of tariffs he imposed on China because China retaliated, and an awful lot of US businesses were complaining about what it was going to mean in terms of their increased costs.
Right. Now, remember, the way I see tariffs, whether they're against China or whether they're imposed on Latin America or Asian countries, whatever they may be, Great Britain or Canada, whatever, tariffs are basically a tax on Americans. I mean, the products will cost a little more as a result of perhaps less buying. On the other hand, when that product comes across our border, the tariff will be paid, and that tariff goes to the U.S. Treasury. So in a way, it is to pay the bills for the things that President Trump wants to accomplish during his presidency. It's a tax on us.
Ambassador Joseph Westphal, former US ambassador to Saudi Arabia. It's been great to speak to you tonight. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Take care.